All right, I want to call to order the Committee of the Whole for the Geneva City Council. My name is Mary Sino. I represent the 3rd Ward along with Dean Kilberg. I see that all the aldermen are present except for Alderman Brown. The consent agenda is the items that are asterisks, and all we have tonight is the approval for the minutes from the September 22nd, 2014 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Bruno and Flanagan. Moving on to the items of, oh,
Voice vote? All in
oh,
favor?
we need a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Taking over from you.
Okay, the items of business, the first one is 4A, recommend approval of special event application for Geneva Chamber of Commerce Christmas Walk event December 5th and 6th of 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Cummings and Singer. Want to vote? Any questions?
Judy's here, you want to talk to her?
Judy, you want to say anything?
It'd be a great event.
All right.
As usual.
Assuming no polar vortex.
So
be
all,
great.
anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item 4B, recommend draft resolution authorizing emergency generator repairs to Western Avenue Lift Station by Patton Power Systems at a cost not to exceed $24,516.
So moved.
Second.
Flanagan, seconded by Marks. All in favor?
No.
Aye.
Any comments or questions? Sorry. All right, item 4C, recommend draft resolution amending site plan related to 3,400 square foot building addition for recycling center at Northern Illinois Food Bank -273 Dearborn Court.
So moved.
Second.
Kilberg, Bruno. Any questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Jeez, really?
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to 4D, recommend acceptance of the city's 2014 comprehensive annual financial report. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Second, Marks.
Cummings and Marks.
And Marks.
We should have a presentation, yes, please do.
And this is Tom Dahl.
Yep, good evening.
Here to answer any questions anybody has.
Before I get started, before we go to questions, Fred Lance is here from Sicketch LLP. He'll do a site presentation. Just to let you know, the audit, as we have it up there, it's the CAFR. There's a wealth of information for anybody looking for information on the city and the year that passed. The audit opinion is in there, management's discussion and analysis.
Mr. Dahl, can you turn your microphone on, please?
I don't think he has to join us on. I think we have to do this, please. The right button. Try it again. Is it working now?
Now it was on before.
And you all will have to turn yours back on now. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry, growing pains.
I don't know where I was. Management's discussion and analysis, of course, the financial statements, the notes to the financial statements, the required supplementary information, some more detailed financial statements in the back, and then a statistical section of stats over the last 10 years of the city that are important financial indicators and some other important information. This year, of course, we have new auditors, Sicketch LLP, and they would have a different perspective from any previous auditors that we had. And with that, I'll turn it over to Fred, and then we'll be up here together for any questions anybody might have.
Thank you. I'm not even going to ask about the light after the microphone, so. Perfect. On behalf of Sigich LLP, I'd like to thank the chair, the mayor, and the members of the committee of the whole for inviting me here this evening to present the information resulting from our audit of the city as of and for your fiscal year ended April 30th, 2014. As a result of our audit, you should have two documents before you for your review and approval this evening: the comprehensive annual financial report, which is the thicker of the two documents, and then the auditor's communication with those members of the city council or those charged with governance. In addition to those documents, we've also issued a separate compliance opinion on the city's tax increment financing district. We're very pleased to report to the chair, the mayor, and the members of the committee of the whole that we've issued a clean, unmodified opinion on the city's spending in accordance with Illinois compiled statutes for your tax increment financing district. They report that it gets filed with your joint review board as well as with the state comptroller's office electronically so that you're in compliance with your TIF district. We've also issued the State Comptroller's annual financial report electronically to the State Comptroller's office, which is basically a synopsis of the financial information contained in your comprehensive annual financial report that's filed in a little bit different format with the State Comptroller's office. What I thought I'd do, Madam Chair, is briefly review the comprehensive annual financial report, just hit a couple of highlights that I think it's important for the council to be aware of, and then certainly address any questions that yourself or any members of the City Council might have in regards to these documents. I know you have an electronic version, and I have a hard copy. I will do my best to try and alert you to the page numbers in your electronic version as I go through the hard copy of the report that I have with me. So I'll apologize up front, though, if I do make an error in those. First and foremost, we do commend the city for voluntarily preparing a comprehensive annual financial report. This is quite a lengthy set of financial statements that you voluntarily prepared. This goes well above and beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles and well above and beyond the minimum requirements of Illinois compiled statutes. You've prepared this document and presented this document in the spirit of full accountability and full transparency back to the electorate and back to the taxpayers. This really, as your CFO just noted, contains a wealth of information on the city, as well as a very, very great depiction of what your financial position is and changes in financial position. Very, very detailed document. Again, more than you're going to find most governments publishing. Matter of fact, less than 1% of all governments in the country with a population less than 25,000 annually publish a comprehensive annual financial report and receive a clean, unqualified opinion or unmodified opinion from their independent certified public accountants. That puts you in quite an elite group in the country. We do congratulate you for that accomplishment, commend you for that accomplishment, but more importantly, encourage you to continue to set those policies and procedures necessary to receive that clean, unmodified opinion in the future, as well as the preparation of that comprehensive annual financial report. I think you have some financial policies on the agenda next up, if I'm not mistaken, that certainly address some of the items in putting together a comprehensive annual financial report and some of the financial policies that have enabled you to receive that unmodified opinion historically. So again, we encourage you to continue on with that. If you have your electronic files handy, I'm going to start on page number 1 of the comprehensive annual financial report, which is, I think, is page 97. If you're looking at the PDF numbers in the upper left-hand corner, that'd be page 97 of the PDF document that you have. At least that's what it was in the document that I was looking at on your website earlier today. So if you're with me on page number 1, you'll come across the independent auditor's report. Those 3 pages are the only 3 pages in this entire document that we're responsible for. The rest is the responsibility of the city and the city's management, and you all do a very, very good job with that, and we commend you for that. If you're with me on page number 1 in the independent auditor's report, which is on Sigich's letterhead, you'll note in the second paragraph
99.
that these are management, pardon?
It's 99.
99, oh, thank you, thank you. You'll note on the second paragraph, these are management's financial statements, and they are management's responsibilities. So you're responsible for setting those control policies to ensure that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. Our responsibility as auditors, then, is to audit these financial statements and to issue an opinion to determine whether or not the financial statements present fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. This last year, the city expended less than $500,000 in federal financial assistance, so you are not required to undergo a single audit of federal expenditures. Anytime the city expends greater than $500,000 in federal financial assistance, you would have to have a separate special audit performed. Do understand that threshold is being raised now by the federal government, effective for fiscal years ending December 31st, 2015 and thereafter. That threshold will be raised to $750,000 from the current $500,000 level. If you note on page number 2, then, our actual opinion, we're pleased to present a clean, unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements. Our opinion notes that your financial statements present fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and that they're free of any material misstatement. Again, you're one of only about 1% of all municipalities in the country with a population less than 25,000 that annually receives that, so we do commend you for that. Please note that the next paragraph there, under emphasis of matters, the city did adopt a new pronouncement this last year, GASB Statement Number 61, that changed the definition of the financial reporting entity. As a result of that change in definition, you no longer report TRICOM as a part of your overall financial statements, so they've been removed from your financial statements, and instead you now report the Foreign Fire Insurance Board as part of your overall primary government or part of your overall financial statements. Again, that was brought out by a change from GASB Statement Number 61 that the city implemented for the year ended April 30th, 2014. If you turn to page, I'm going to guess this is page 105 then, if I'm off a page or two. Page 105 would probably be the first page of the management discussion and analysis. It's paginated with MD&A 1 on the bottom. 103? Okay, we'll drop back 2 pages now. Okay, to 103. This is an outstanding management discussion and analysis. If you share nothing else with this in this document, with your residents, with your taxpayers, with members of the press, or with anyone who's interested in the overall finances of the city, please share this portion of the document with them. It's a very, very good management discussion and analysis. It's written in a layperson terminology, so it's really meant for the general citizen to read and understand. It helps describe what transpired in the city from last year to this year from a financial standpoint, and then explains what transpired between that 2-year period. Again, very, very well written MD&A. We do provide you with an electronic copy of this document to put up on your website, so we'd encourage you as you meet with residents, taxpayers, or anyone interested in the finances of the city, direct them to the website, direct them to this great comprehensive annual financial report that you've prepared, and most importantly, direct them to that management discussion analysis. We think they'll find that to be very, very useful reading. I'm going to skip over all of that, and I'm going to turn to regular pages number 4 and 5 in the document, which should be pages 113 and 114 in your PDF file. When you come across those, that's the statement of net position for the city as a whole. You have columns for your governmental activities and your business type activities. This is prepared on what we call the economic resources measurement focus and the full accrual basis of accounting. So this is how a private entity or a publicly held company would prepare its consolidated financial statements as well. These are intended to give a reader a very long-term perspective as to how the city is doing, not that short-term perspective. From a long-term perspective, the city is doing fairly well. For the year, you ended up with about $140 million in net position, $90 million of that being on your business type activities, and $49 million of that being on your business type activities, looking on the bottom of page number 5 or page 114 in your document. However, understand that the majority of that net position, $123 million out of that $140 million, is just your net investment in capital assets, what you have tied up in your capital improvement program. So when we take that out, you have about $3 million that are being restricted. Restricted means someone outside the city is telling you, yes, you have those monies on hand, but they can only be spent for this particular purpose. For example, the restricted for Social Security is monies left over from your Social Security tax levy that once it's levied for that purpose can only be used for that purpose to pay the employer's share of that Social Security. Likewise, the restricted for highways and streets is money left over in your motor fuel tax fund at the end of the year that can only be spent for highway and street purposes. The key figure I think that you're interested in is as a council person is the second line up from the bottom of page number 5, that unrestricted net position. You want to see that to be a positive number, and you can see you're reporting a positive $254,000 in the current year. Now, one question you might have is, why is this number a little bit lower than our unassigned fund balance in our general fund? Because your unassigned fund balance in your general fund is right at about a $4 million level. So how does that correlate to unrestricted net assets of only $250,000? It's due to 2 or 3 primary reasons. One, you have about $1.5 million in compensated absences liabilities outstanding that aren't reported as part of your general fund. Once we bring those into this column, that would reduce your fund balance by that $1.5 million. Next, you have a net pension obligation of about $2 million. That doesn't get recorded in your general fund. It only gets recorded here in your governmental activities. That, again, is a direct reduction of your net position. So right there, we accounted for about $1.6 million of reduction of that $2.6 million of a reduction from that overall general fund balance. So you can see how we get down to that unrestricted amount of $254,000. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news for the chair, the mayor, and the members of the council, but most governments, including your government, will probably report an unrestricted net position 2 years from now, for your year ended April 30th, 2016. The reason being is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, who sets the standards that you follow in preparing your financial statements, has changed the guidance for how we recognize the cost of pensions in the future. Historically, we've recognized the expense for funding a pension when we funded it. So it's been very, very funding driven and driven by how much we contribute to that pension fund. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board does not believe that that is the correct way to recognize a pension cost under the accrual basis of accounting. So in the future, they want us to recognize the pension expense and liability when the benefit is earned by the employee, regardless of when it might be funded by the employer. Very, very holistic change in accounting and financial reporting for pensions in the state and local government industry, very similar to how we account for them in the private sector. As a result of that, you are going to bring on to this statement that you see on pages 4 and 5 about $18 million of previously unrecorded liabilities related to those pensions. You will remove that $2 million net pension obligation from the financial statements, so the net impact then is going to be a decline of about $16 million to your overall unrestricted net position that you see on page number 5. Please do not feel that you're alone in this. Just about every unit of government in Illinois that has a downstate police pension plan or a downstate fire pension plan will be in the same condition you are and will report probably a negative unrestricted net position on a long-term basis. Please understand this will not impact your general fund balance, nor will it change your general fund balance or how you budget for your general fund. This is only going to impact you from this very, very long-term perspective. From your general fund standpoint, if you turn to page number 9, which is, I believe, page 118 in this document, in your electronic document, the key benchmark in your general fund is your fund balance. You ended up the year with about $4.4 million in fund balance in your general fund. A little over $4 million of that was unassigned. You have a policy that you'd like to maintain your fund balance at a minimum at about 25% of your current year expenditures for your general fund. With your current fund balance that you reported of about $4 million, you're at about 28% of your expenditures of your general fund, so just a little bit above your benchmark that you've established for your fund balance. Your general fund did operate at a bit of a surplus this year. You transferred the majority of that surplus over for capital purposes to benefit the residents of the city in the future. On note 6J on page number 43 of the document, which is page 152 of your electronic version, you'll note that the city undertook a refunding this last year, a refunding of long-term debt. It was a very, very good refunding for the city. You actually saved residents of the city about $80,000 on a cash flow basis on the future debt payments. That was a good cash flow savings when you consider the fact you only refunded about $1.5 million in debt. So to be able to save almost $100,000 on a $1.5 million refunding is a very, very good refunding for the residents of the city. The last comments I have then, Madam Chair, are on the funded status of the pension funds, and those are on pages 61 through 63 of the hard copy of the document, or pages 171 through 173 of the electronic version of the document. I know we're all concerned about the funded status of pensions here in the state of Illinois because we often hear about the overall funded status, whether we're talking about the state or other states. Starting on page 61 for the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, we always recommend to our clients that you look at that third column, that funded ratio column on that page, and we always want to see that ratio coming up over time. Yours did come up over the last couple of years to about 76.6% funded. Pretty good funded status for IMRF. The statewide average is about 75%, so you're just a little bit above that statewide average. Do understand, though, that IMRF uses what we call a 5-year smooth market value to come up with the actuarial value of assets. With that philosophy, they push off gains and losses into future years. IMRF had a very, very good year last year, but they only took 20% of those gains last year and pushed off 80% of the gains to the future. Had they taken all those gains as of December 31st, 2013, your funded status of your plan would actually have been about 92.5% funded, as opposed to the 5-year smooth market value, which shows you at about 76.6% funded. So a much better funded status when we look at that full market value basis. For your police pension fund, on the next page, 62, you're at about 57.46% funded, about 2 basis points above where you were last year. A little bit below the statewide average, but you can see in that fourth column, that's part of where that unfunded actuarial accrued liability that's going to reduce your unrestricted net position, where that's going to be coming from. Also tonight, I believe you're going to be passing a pension funding policy, which is going to get you ready for implementing GASB Statement 67 and 68 during the next 2 fiscal year period. The last comment, Madam Chair, then is on page 63. Again, that third column, the funded ratio column, your fire pension fund is at about 83.59% funded as of April 30th, 2014. One thing I'd like to note is historically, the city has been 1 year behind on its actuarial valuations, so you are generally looking at funded status that was 1 year old. We worked very closely with the city and the city's actuary this year to get everything caught up for you in the current year. So what you're seeing now are valuations that were actually performed as of the end of this fiscal year, as of April 30th, 2014. So it's the latest information available that you're finding now in your required supplementary information. We did that, one, to give you the latest information available, but two, to get you ready for implementing GASB Statement 67 and 68 in the not-too-distant future. Overall, the city's in pretty good financial condition on a short-term basis and a long-term basis. You certainly have your challenges, like most units of local government do, especially coming out of the recession and weathering the recession that we just went through. You're heading in the right direction by adopting a pension funding policy to get ready for the implementation of GASB Statement 67 and 68. And overall, you have some pretty good internal controls on a citywide basis. That concludes the very brief presentation I prepared this evening. I'd be happy to address any questions, Madam Chair, that yourself or any members of the council might have in regards to these documents.
Thank you. Does any, Alderman Cummings?
Thank you. What assumed rate of return are people using? What are the actuaries using now, and how do you feel? Is that accurate, not accurate?
Ours is 7.5% for both the police and fire.
Yeah.
And that's also what the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund uses, is 7.5%. In looking at the asset mix that the pension funds have, from an asset standpoint, understanding that the rate of return is always a long-term rate, it's never a short-term rate that they're looking at, and they're not looking at historically what's happened, but what might happen in the future. We think that a 7.5%, while perhaps at the upper end of what we see, is within the realm of reasonableness for a pension fund. We've certainly been seeing them come down over the last couple of years. The Illinois Department of Revenue now is recommending that you go down to about a 6.75% investment rate of return. But understand, they're dealing with a lot of pension funds that don't have the ability to invest in equities. They're restricted just to fixed income securities, so that's why they have a little bit lower rate from a statewide average. So,
Aren't we restricted to keeping at least 55% fixed in the portfolio?
generally, somewhere between 45 and 55%, depending on the investment policies of the police or fire pension fund, has to stay in a fixed income. Yes, they did expand that authorization this last year to go outside of what we'd call U.S. Treasury and agency obligations to allow investments in corporate bonds, which has helped improve their yield somewhat on their long-term debt instruments.
If you were able to guesstimate, or if you had to guesstimate, and you use, say, a 6.5 or 6.75% return rather than 7+, what would our funding percentage look like?
That's an excellent question, and you would think you wrote some of the GASB pronouncements that you're going to be implementing in the next year or two, because that's exactly some of the disclosure they're going to have. In addition to disclosing your funded status, you're going to have to show what happens to our funded status with a 1% swing in either direction of that investment rate of return. In yours, and looking at the size of your systems, 1% rate of return would probably be about a $3 million swing in either direction in the total liability calculation. Not much from a contribution standpoint, more from a long-term liability standpoint. One thing that I think you're heading in the direction of is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, as part of implementing GASB 67 and 68, is not going to let all governments use their investment rate of return that we've historically used to discount their assets and their liability back to the present value. Instead, they're going to look at, have you been putting aside enough money historically to fund that pension on a go-forward basis? If you have, you're going to be allowed to use your investment rate of return. If you haven't, you're going to be required to use what we call a blended rate, somewhere between an investment rate of return and a borrowing rate on a 20-year general obligation bond, because the philosophy in that instance is you haven't been putting money into your pension plan. Instead, you've been borrowing from it. So why should you use an investment rate of return to discount that liability? Instead, you should use a borrowing rate. And as we all know, the lower the discount rate, the higher the liability. So that will be coming within the next year now as you go to implement GASB 67.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Simonian?
Thank you, Chairman. A couple questions. I don't know who's going to answer them, but I got through some of this stuff. Started yesterday, way out of my league. On the document, Fred, that your company provided on page 65 in our packet, under the heading of other matters.
Yes,
on
sir.
the back.
On page number 4 of that document?
1, 2, 3, yep, 4.
Okay.
The last line in the first paragraph where it says, "We did not audit the required supplementary information and do not express an opinion or provide any assurance on the required supplementary information."
Yes, sir.
Why not?
Because audit standards prohibit us from doing so. Otherwise, we'd be happy to do so. However, as your CFO can attest to, we go over that information with a fine-tooth comb. And we provide suggestions to it. We ensure that it's presented in accordance with the rest of the financial statements. But unfortunately, audit standards, because of where some of that information is derived from, does not allow us to issue an opinion on those. Same thing with your trend information, your statistical section. We're prohibited from issuing an opinion on that as well, so we've had to disclaim an opinion on that. Other than that, we've audited the rest of the financial section and have issued either a full scope opinion or an in relation to opinion on the entire financial section.
Thank you. On the packet on page 74, or the letter to us. Under the, it doesn't have a page number, but page 3 under significant deficiency. And it talks about the pension fund investments.
Yes.
And maybe, Tom, you can answer this. Who's responsible for investing our funds?
Our funds,
Our
the city funds, myself, I do the investments with Mary's input and the treasurer's input for the city
The policy
funds.
adopted by the city.
Right, right.
Okay.
For the police and fire pension funds, the police and fire pension board are vested with the responsibility for investing those funds, and they both have adopted investment policies that are in accordance with compiled statutes, and then we test for compliance with those policies.
Okay, thank you. On the next page, when you discuss the appropriate segregation of duties with regards to payroll, I mean, I experienced this in a company where this was not segregated properly, and the people who had control over the actual employment information and check, especially when checks are electronically signed and stuff like that. I know it may be an asset issue, human asset issue in a billion people, but I think we need to make sure that that part, however it's figured out, is buttoned tight, because it was a huge crack in a past life of mine, and I can see how it could be a huge crack here.
As you noted, ideally, having that segregated between multiple individuals is the best, but we all deal with very scarce resources.
Right.
So from a compensating control standpoint, having your ERP system to be able to print out an audit report before each payroll is run that will show you what changes have been made and by whom would be a very, very good check and balance for that.
I agree. And who would, and Tom would review that?
I would, or Stephanie would, and we've been
Okay.
fighting with New World, trying to get them to do this. I guess in the legacy system,
In
their
the,
old system.
in the original system, they had an audit trail. When they integrated to the system that we have, that audit trail went away because they instituted security templates.
Okay.
But what they didn't contemplate is that two employees could have the exact same security template. So we have been continually suggesting and making recommendations that they reinstitute that, and we're hoping in one of the new releases that'll happen.
But in the meantime.
In the meantime, I review
report
payroll.
is- So, okay, so someone, a third person is reviewing, okay.
And then actually, all the transmittals to the bank happens over in finance.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so the HR division processes payroll. They send the documents to finance, who actually sends the money to the bank and reviews it from that
And I
side.
noticed that we have a positive pay
Yes.
structure.
Right, we have pay, positive pay. We don't issue a lot of checks themselves, a lot of it's
Direct
direct
deposit.
deposit.
Yeah, we have
But when
25
we're
live
doing that,
checks.
We're always reviewing, is this one much higher than the one from the month before, and
Gotcha.
why? You know, so we know when we had a lot of snow plowing, because the payroll was higher.
Gotcha.
So we don't do it on an individual basis, but at least look at on a total when we're submitting these.
Okay.
Where is it?
Oh, yeah, so I would love it too. Let's see, under the investment policy, number 4 on that same page, where it says requirements of section 1.09 of the city's investment policy, as the collateral is maintained in a single institution collateral pool not held in the city's name, and that there were some uncollateralized, an account was uncollateralized at the State Bank of Geneva for some $84,000. And then it, further on, under the management's response, it said that the MB Financial, during the RFP process, that was told about this, and they violated the city's investment policy.
Right.
Is there anybody on our side who's responsible for oversight of this?
That was my fault.
Okay.
When they came to do to sign the documents for the collateral, I didn't look at it to see that it was going to be a collateral pool. They do have individual collateral, so that's already been changed. That's something
Okay.
we took care of. As soon as it was noted, I called the bank. So the city funds were collateralized. It just wasn't in accordance with the investment policy.
Okay.
So we were collateralized. There was no issue with that. But we have changed it, and in fact, we'll be going, one of the newest collateral pieces that we can use now is a letter of credit, which the state allows. It's in our name, and it's backed by the FHLB,
Federal Home Loan Bank.
Federal Home Loan Bank. It's cheaper for the bank to do that as well, because holding collateral is very expensive for them. So not only, now we'll get a reduction in the fees that we accrue, and we have a stronger piece of collateral.
Okay.
And then as far as the other one, State Bank of Geneva, that's the Geneva Police Pension Fund, and they've been made aware that they don't have a collateral agreement with State Bank of Geneva, and
Okay.
they'll be getting one in place. Next time we meet, we'll discuss it, and then talk with State Bank of Geneva.
Gotcha. Under the utility billings, where they talk about auditing unbilled utility receivables, there were 2 errors that were understated by approximately $130,000. Can you explain a little bit about that, or who's responsible, or?
That's me as well. When we, so after April 30th, any of the utility bills that are produced after that, we bill in arrears. So the first bill that was printed on the 6th of May, basically 100% of that was for usage in the month of April. So 100% of that is booked as unbilled revenue. So all the subsequent billings after that, I have to calculate how much of that time frame belongs in April, how much of the time frame belongs in May. And that gets booked as unbilled because it's billed in the month of May, but it's recorded in the month of April. So it's an estimate.
So it's an estimate.
It is an estimate,
Okay.
and I also do that for the final bills. So
Okay.
I had to go through each final bill to figure out what percentage of the month belongs in April, what percentage of the bill belongs in April, what percentage belongs in May.
Okay.
My spreadsheet, I have all these ties, and one of them wasn't picking up 2 columns. So
Gotcha.
when they brought it to me, it was a mistake, and again, it's an estimate, but it was still my fault.
Gotcha.
Had no impact on cash and no impact on the future cash flows of the system, so.
Okay. On the next page, under pumped to build ratio,
I should have kept them here, I knew that.
it says that the ratio of gallons pumped into the system versus gallons billed by the system was 71%, which is below industry standards. I saw management's response, could be possibly some infrastructure issues, but they're continuing to investigate. I guess my question is more of in the past, is that 71%, or has that been consistent?
It's been consistent, right? It's been 75%, I believe, somewhere
Okay.
between 70 and 75%, which is very low. Other places I've been, but they are on DuPage Water, totally different, system.
Yeah.
You're talking 94, 95%.
Okay.
But here being on our own water, we don't know. Bob's been racking his brain trying to figure out, we've had it could be going in the river, we
Yeah.
don't know. So it's something we're actively pursuing.
Oh, I'm sure that's part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering if this was just in the last year, or this was a common
No, this has been
occurrence.
ongoing.
Okay.
Is it getting better since we're doing that infrastructure improvements? I mean, we've been lining a lot of pipes.
I don't know.
Okay, that's,
You know,
I'll email Bob.
I would rather have, Bob
I'll
answer
email
that.
Bob, so if he can give us the past history.
Yeah, and then the lining is on the sewer side, but you do get the infiltrate, who knows?
I have one other question on page 99, on our back, the independent auditor's report. Actually, two. On page 1, on the last paragraph, it says, "But not for the purpose of expressing an opinion of the effectiveness of the city's internal control. Accordingly, we express no such opinion." Is there a reason for that?
Yes, you asked us to do a financial audit of the city, not an internal control audit of the city.
But that is a option?
An internal control audit?
Yeah.
You can always have any type of internal control audit type done. They take a variety of different shapes and sizes. I think the city had one done a couple of years ago. You had it.
Just a year ago.
Right, yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we received a copy of that and actually went through that in detail as part of our audit process. too,
Okay.
so.
Just making sure if you remembered when it was done. That's the only reason I asked the question. And lastly, on the second page, under other matters,
Yes, sir. Back to the required supplementary information, yes.
yes, we do not express an opinion or provide any assurance on the information because the limited procedures do not provide us with sufficient evidence to express an opinion or provide any assurance.
Yes, sir. As we discussed before, the management discussion analysis, and then the pension trend information, audit standards prohibit us from issuing opinions on it.
Okay,
But we go with them with a fine-tooth comb, as the actuary can attest to and as the city can attest to ensure the completeness and accuracy and consistency of the information.
okay, thank you. Well, one last question, Tom. Who did we use as our auditor prior to Sickich?
The prior 8 years was Costable and Steffens.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Welcome. Anyone else?
You got no mind.
Alderman Flanagan?
Yeah, is there any type of bonding that we require for people who handle any of our payroll or anything like that?
By statute, the mayor, the city administrator, the finance manager, and the treasurer are bonded.
Good.
Everybody else is covered under our general liability policy.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So we should, do you want a roll call?
We're just accepting the report.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item 4E, recommend draft resolution adopting financial policies. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Mark, seconded by Simonian. Any questions? Alderman Simonian?
Thank you, Chairman. Real quick, on all the changes that were made, does Sickich review those as well prior to,
No,
No?
I didn't have them review it. I didn't send it to them.
okay. Is it wise to do that, or is that, will be that, oh, there's a
Yeah,
cost?
there are policies, they would, when they do the audit, they look to make sure that we're in compliance with our policies.
So next year, they'll review it again, and if there's a discrepancy, they'll catch it at that point?
That's correct.
Okay.
If I could just say that we adhere to advice from GFOA, because they have standard policies, financial policies that they recommend. So many of these are copied from their recommendations, i.e. the 25% fund balance, general fund.
Gotcha.
It's where those things come from.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Alderman Flanagan?
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman. I just, Mary brought up a good point. Any of the deficiencies, that doesn't preclude any of our, we're still in good standing with the GFOA audit.
Yes,
Okay,
very
thank
good
you.
standing.
Alderman Kilberg?
Tom, a question. As we look at the electric sales and customers, and we look at that summary, that table, if we simply divided the kilowatt hours by the dollars, Would that give us an accurate estimate of what our actual cost, or what the Geneva consumer was actually paying per kilowatt hour?
Where you
He's
at?
back in the audit.
Pardon me? Oh, right here. This table.
Oh, that's from the audit.
Yeah.
But that,
This is the financial analysis statement.
right, and this is for the financial policy.
Yeah. But I just was wondering.
Okay, I mean, as far our cost per kilowatt hour, well, that's mainly just the,
I mean, this would be kilowatt hours sold and
Correct.
receipts, right?
correct.
Okay. So
So if you, if you divided those two,
that would give us a
right, per kilowatt hour.
correct cost per kilowatt hour, pretty close.
For the average person, right, but then that's all of the
It's a- I
rates
know.
combined, commercial.
Overall.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, I'm sorry, it was
Oh,
a
it's
lot
okay.
of turn there, but while we had you here, I didn't want you to get away.
That's okay. Catching me off guard, that's all.
Anyone else? Remarks?
Well, I'm back to the policies.
Okay.
Just one overall question before I start, and I apologize, I didn't get to take a look at this until like 5 o'clock tonight. I spent my weekend reading the audited report, so someone did read it. I noticed throughout all of the policies, the city treasurer isn't mentioned at all in here. Is that normal? I mean, as an investment, even underneath the investment area, the city treasurer doesn't pop up in any, I didn't see him,
You're right.
in there, and that seemed kind of, I was looking to see where that was, especially when you were talking.
Yeah, he would be in the investment.
Yeah, and I didn't see it there, and I could have gone over it.
That's a good point.
It's just, I've got to find that section, and I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's,
did- I
it's.
did make a comment.
Yeah, it's the
and I-
second page
Page
of the,
268.
Yeah, okay, I just didn't see him.
Does it have
In-
anybody? I mean, does it?
yeah, because it mentions the mayor and the city council.
Right, but it didn't mention the
Right,
treasurer, so
treasurer,
I was
right.
just, I would think that, that the treasurer would be in there.
That was an oversight.
That's okay, I wish I could have sent you an email on that, to be honest with you, but I just didn't have the time. The budgetary policy, it says the city will strive to maintain an available fund balance of at least 90 days of the budget year operating expenditures. That's just cash, correct, is what you're talking about there? or-
In essence, you're right, that's basically what it boils down to.
Yeah, I just wonder, and then we talk about available cash for at least 90 days for the electric fund and the water fund. Should we just mention that as cash availability rather than fund balance? I mean, we're really talking about cash, not funds. That's
Well,
the budgetary policies.
Right, right. I did that for electric and water because there's not an equivalent. Because if you look, in the electric, we do report the net assets. So that number includes capital assets. So for electric and water, that kind of throws things off because you'd have to have a lot of cash on hand
Okay.
to cover. So, on those two, for electric and water, I just want to focus everybody's attention on cash.
Okay.
Whereas the general fund could include accounts receivable and other items. It doesn't always include cash. There could be, because we do have receivables out there. So it's not only cash, but it's cash plus receivables. So with electric and water, I like to, it makes it a lot easier for presentation when I say, here's our cash.
Okay.
It's easier, especially when we do the budget.
Fine, I just wanted some clarification.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's okay. And then if you go underneath the operating policies, number 2, the maintaining existing service levels, is that just normal wordage that goes into that for
Actually, I
most?
believe that was from the last financial
Yeah, that
policy. I don't
wasn't
think that's on.
changed.
Do we
yeah.
really want that? I mean, is that necessary? I mean, it just opens.
Well, the pay-as-you-go,
No, the
No,
second
the
one.
maintain existing service
Maintain
levels.
existing service levels.
It's actually number 2.
it's just a way of saying we want to maintain high service levels and just state it, put it in
Okay.
writing.
Because I think everybody agrees to that, yeah.
Right,
okay.
but it's just really to send the message to anybody reading it that we haven't forgotten this. At the same time we're doing everything else, we still want to acknowledge that we're trying to maintain a high level of service.
Then, item 4 in that area, the balanced budget, we did make a change there. Originally, it said the city will present a budget annually to the council that is within the city's ability to pay with the expenditures not exceeding well, current revenues, and now we added prior year fund balances?
Right, because oftentimes, you know, when we talk about a balanced budget, it's not just the current revenues, but sometimes we're using the fund balance, the reserves, everybody calls it the reserves. So that's the prior year, it's a piece of the prior year fund balance. So in years that we may have a project and we want to use 200,000 of the fund balance, the revenue is coming from that prior year reserve. So I just wanted to call that out, that it's current year revenue plus prior year reserves is where we get the balanced budget.
Madam Chairman, if I
Yeah,
might,
go ahead.
you may recall on different funds having seen a line item that says reappropriation
Yes.
in there, that's what
That's
that
what it
is.
What that
Fine,
is,
okay.
so-
I just,
Yeah, so
I just wanna make
we've been using that, I mean,
Right.
for as long as I know, we've always used reappropriation, but that's what that means.
Okay.
Means is we're taking that amount out of the fund balance for this particular budget.
And that was clarification for not only you, but for when I submit the budget, they always like to see what our definition of a balanced budget is. And it is not just current revenues and current expenditures. It's,
Okay.
you know, the
oh,
reappropriation.
it's clarification?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Then I think we get into the investment policies, and it was actually, I guess it's 3.5 was where I would have expected to see the treasurer in there as investment officer,
Not the budget off.
delegation of authority, management, and,
It says investment officer.
yeah, investment officer. So is that really not what the city treasurer does, or is he just delegating?
No, that was just an oversight,
Okay, fine,
just an oversight.
okay. And so everything in blue, pretty much, the rest of this, the authorized, this looks like that's straight out of some of,
Yes, a lot of it was out of the state statute.
yeah, that's what I can sense.
Three of them.
Basically, you know, the allowed investments, everything came right out of the state statute. Some of it, you know, from other documents.
You know, I've numbered the pages, but I just wanted to, so underneath the investments, I guess it's 4.7, item F. So we actually use the four highest general classifications, we go down
Yeah.
to four?
We don't go down to the four. Generally, like.
That's why I wonder if we should
yeah.
change it to what we go down to, that was my
Yeah,
question
because
here.
mainly they're all AAA rated.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You know, it gives you the flexibility.
Isn't
if
four
they're-
a little low?
Yeah, yeah, and we can, and that's what, you know, the state allows.
Yeah, I
And,
know.
you know, we can change that.
And that's why I wonder if we
Okay.
really don't, that's pretty low, I mean, that's just about
I mean, we can do
junk
the.
level. I mean, not that bad,
No,
but it's
not that
getting
bad.
down there, but I
No.
mean,
But we can certainly change that. You know, I'm open to that. That's, so.
I guess I'd look to Don for that. Did I?
Typically, in a low-interest rate environment, we get a squeeze between, we get a credit difference squeeze. Everybody's reaching for higher yield, and so you get this compression effect between BAA and as you move up, everything gets compressed. And so in a normal environment, you get X more yield by stepping out, by stepping down in credit. And when you get yield compression, you get X minus something extra yield. You get a little bit less for taking on the same additional risk. And anytime, I think, if you're getting less reward for taking the same risk, then perhaps that's not, you know, you go to game theory, you know, it's really not worth it, right? So, and it's not like we're running out of paper to buy. There's certainly a good supply out there. So I would tend to agree with Alderman Marks. that,
But where would you
that
feel comfortable with it?
Correct. I think there's probably no reason to go stepping below A, unless you get into a piece that's non-rated, but it's escrowed or pre-refunded or something like that, and it happens not to have a rating because they didn't pay for the extra, for the re-rating. But I would, I would think there's no reason not to stick with A or better. I wouldn't go down to BAA with the city money.
Let's open up for comment, because I'm really changing the document, I mean. I'm asking to change it, I said, I guess.
And it may be moot, you know, it may
Yeah, I
be
know it may be
we're
moot.
talking about something that is theoretically out there, but
we don't do
practically
it.
we don't do it, yeah.
Right, yeah. I
That's
mean,
what I'm saying, we normally don't go that
No.
low, so I don't know
No.
why we should have that as a policy.
Because mostly what, for example, PMA, you know, they have even tougher limits. So what they present to me for investments is a lot higher, you know, they're all AAA, and usually what we're going for is something like that. But it does give us the ability to go down. So, you know, if you want to tighten it up, we can tighten it up. You know, like I said, this is just what the state statute provides. And so I'll take any, suggestions, so.
John, are you saying we should go to
Mike's off. Yeah, that's what, are you?
Three
gonna-
highest.
Two highest?
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just
Certainly 3,
compromise
so
here
down
and-
to single A.
and notch it up
Stinks.
to 3 instead of 4?
Yeah.
2 or 3 is
Yeah.
fine with me.
I'm kind of philosophically, I think, if we're, you know, take the risk on the equity side,
Right.
accept the volatility and whatnot on the equity side, and on the bond side, you know, line it up with the liabilities and the cash flow needs and stuff like that, and go with that. I tend to be pretty conservative though, so
So am I.
I don't know.
Tom, have we, or Mary, have we gone as low as 4 classifications
Not
yet?
that I- No,
We don't usually go below 2, I don't think.
no, I don't usually go below 2.
So why even,
It gives you the flexibility, it gives somebody the flexibility to go to 3 if it gives you the yield, or, you know, if you're presented with something that, you know, carries the higher yield, but generally we don't. But, you know, you don't want to make it so limited that I can't do anything. But I can understand, you know, going to 4. When I wrote this, you know, 4 is not junk.
No,
but
but it's getting
you know,
down
it
there.
gets
Yeah,
into
there's
the
some
risky,
risk.
you know, gets, like you said, you know, you get the higher yield and good in different markets. But I'm, you know, 3 is fine.
Okay.
I just don't want to
I'm
limit.
fine with 3.
Yeah, I just
The
don't
other
wanna
way to
limit
get, you know, there's a few different ways to get yield, and one is taking structure risk rather than credit risk. And so then you get into callability, which in a low interest rate environment isn't that big a deal,
Right.
but you get compensated for it, and you don't have to, you know, drop in credit quality, so.
But it is a theoretical.
Yeah, Alderman Bruno, you have a
It
question?
is it's a theoretical thing. Can you envision us ever?
No.
Going down 4 now.
If we can't come up with a plausible scenario where we would go that low,
Why
I
have?
have to say, it's nice to have something set, though.
Right.
Some institutional memory, some rules, some guidelines, some.
well, if staff can't come up with any scenario where we'd go that low, then there's not really a problem I would have no problem adjusting it to 3.
Yeah, I don't either.
But
Okay, should we,
Sorry.
I would move we adjust it to 3.
okay. In a second?
Second. Now you gotta take a vote.
All
on it.
those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think that is it.
Too late now.
No, I got next week still.
oh, that's right. Forgot. This is a cow meeting.
He's gonna make the changes with the treasurer, everything, so.
Okay, so,
Just, Madam Chairman, one point I'd like to make to Mr. Dahl as well. With respect to what we can assume are Scribner's errors, by not listing the treasurer as part of the investment council, we should also include the budget officer, I think, as well.
Oh, yeah,
So,
that's fine.
so that'll come back next week.
That's fine. I didn't, I just, it was just odd to me to see all
No,
these
it's a good
financial
catch.
policies and not see a treasurer, city treasurer. You know, he's gotta earn his money, right? And where is, I was gonna call him and kid him and told him we wrote him out about the policies, but.
all right, we still need to vote on approving the financial policies as amended.
As amended.
As amended. So moved.
All right,
We have a motion.
We
all
Oh,
all right, all those in
Sorry.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Any new business?
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Really,
Tom,
that's
nice
a
job.
lot of work, I know, that is.
Any new business? Okay, so item number 6 is a closed session on the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of an employee of public body.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and I believe we need a roll call.
Yes, we do. Mike Bruno?
Aye.
Donald Cummings?
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan?
Aye.
Dean Kilburg?
Aye.
Craig Maladra?
Aye.
Richard Marks?
Aye.
Tom Simonian?
Aye.
Ron Singer? Mary Sino?
Aye.
There'll be no action.
Oh, Bill.
Aye.
We're not going into closed session?
No action taken, therefore.
Oh, okay, we're not coming out to do any more business, so if anybody wants to leave.
Thank you.